Mr. Secretary, it's great to have you here on set with us.
Great to be here, Morgan. Thank you.
So I do want to start with some of this news of the day, these reports that we've gotten about Elon Musk and the fact that maybe some of his ventures, as we just mentioned, could be potentially the subjects of security reviews. I mean, we've certainly seen other social media companies reviewed by CFIUS, whether it's Tumblr, whether it's TikTok, which continues to be under scrutiny, but those were Chinese-owned and or acquired. So how, given the fact that he is also the CEO and founder of a major government contractor, how likely would it be to actually see CFIUS investigate a deal like this?
You know, it's a good question. And first of all, I do some consulting for SpaceX. But look, I've been involved in CFIUS in the past, during my time on Capitol Hill, and of course, during my time in government. And I'm sure there's a process. You're right. Typically, it looks at foreign investment in the United States, as the name defines itself. So we'll see which way they go on this.
Okay. In terms of Starlink, that's been getting a lot of attention, given the fact that it has become such a crucial part of the Ukrainian fight on the ground in that country against Russia. Has certainly been a source of controversy, at least online on Twitter, in the last couple of days. Meantime, we've got a Wall Street Journal report that the Pentagon is talking to SpaceX about the possibility of using more of those services. I guess walk me through how some of that new technology is making such a difference for the warfighter and on the battlefield right now, and whether so much of what we're hearing is noise or whether we could actually potentially see, for example, the DoD step in to fund some of these operations.
Well, look, command, control, and communications is critical in any warfight, particularly when you're going against a high-end country like Russia or China that has the means to jam or block or disrupt signals. So, look, I think what SpaceX has done what Starlink has done is really changed the battlefield at a time when Ukrainians didn't have that communication. Musk moved forward, deployed, 20,000 terminals at a time when Ukraine really needed it, and we didn't have a means to support that, and it's been essential to the battlefield from every report I see and hear.
I realize this is not the way government contracting usually works. However, I can think back to a time a couple of years ago where I was sitting in your office in the Pentagon when you were the Secretary of the Army, and we were talking about all of the ways you were trying to cut through red tape and the bureaucratic process to bring new technologies to the battlefield more quickly. Is that what we're seeing play out in real time right now?
Well, it's a different way, and you're right. I mean, I stood up Army Futures Command in Austin, Texas. I was just at Carnegie Mellon this week, where we stood up the Army AI Task Force. All these things to accelerate DoD access to innovation. It's way too slow. And if this is another means to do it, because, look, Starlink will give access in remote areas of the world, remote areas in countries. It's a breakthrough, and it's something that needs to be explored as another component of DoD's means to provide command, control, and communications in wartime.
We did get a readout this morning of Austin's phone call with Shoigu, the Russian defense minister. Would have been the first since the spring. Is that material? Is there a buildup to an argument that more communication now is better than less?
More communication is always important, particularly when you're in conflict. I spoke with my Chinese and Russian counterparts quarterly just to build a relationship, to share understandings and express our views on things. So it's good that they're doing it, but we need more of it, particularly as this conflict becomes more and more of a failure for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, well, on that note, it's hard to even ask the question, in a sense, the use of tactical nuclear weapons, but he's brought up that possibility. What are the conversations on our side in terms of what the response would be should that ever actually occur?
Well, look, I think it's possible but not likely. My view is let's not wait till we have to react. I argue that we should be proactive, preventive, in the sense that if we see any Russian tactical nuclear weapons moving to a missile launch pad or a airstrip, then we should immediately put up an air cap. We, being the United States and preferably our NATO allies, put up an air cap over Ukraine and shoot down anything that's carrying a nuclear weapon. Let's avoid the blast. But look, failing that, I think we should be very clear publicly again with Moscow that if there's a nuclear weapon detonated, we will go after, using conventional means, their launch pads, their launch points, and take these systems out.